Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
And we'd like to welcome everybody to the Football's Family Podcast. And I have a special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Paul Hembekides. If you watch ESPN or listen to ESPN radio, you very likely know me as Hembo. I am the right-hand man of Mike Greenberg, the co-host of Greeny's radio show, a content producer on our morning show, Get Up, a weekly contributor to Buster Olney's Baseball Tonight podcast, and most importantly, or at least for now, the co-author of Got Your Answers, which is our newest book. Mike Greenberg and I wrote a book that came out yesterday, Tuesday. It would be the 24th of September. We are very excited about it. We're very excited to talk to you about it, and very excited to talk to you about whatever else in the world of sports might tickle you today. So it's a delight to be here, and I very much appreciate you inviting us.
Well, thank you for coming on. The book is basically facts and different types of facts, which is what you're known for. And one of the things about the books that I'm enjoying is just 10 facts or 5 facts about different things. I'm going to grill you. This is a cold read right here. Okay.
I'm ready.
Now, this has not been a good season for the Titans so far. It's been an awful season. And I'm just going to keep my mouth shut because I have negative things to say. And that's not what this show is about. Off the top of your head, give me some good news about the Titans. Give me something that would make me feel better about myself. You are the facts guy. Do you have anything that can give me good news? If you say no, then I'm just it's like, all right.
Well, the Titans would very likely be 2-1 if Will Levis could just reduce the one catastrophic play per game. I actually believe that he is an extremely talented, extremely toolsy player, and I know that it is extremely unpleasant when you're watching your own quarterback sabotage a game and potentially sabotage a season with his growing pains. But he's a young quarterback. He's sort of a gunslinger who sort of models his game after some of those players of yesteryear. And so that's going to kind of be the result that you will find. I think on the defensive side of the ball, you guys are way ahead of where I thought you might be. The defense is going to keep you guys in a lot more games than I would have expected. I think the AFC South is probably going to be even a little weaker than the world expected because Jacksonville is the team that I think is going to be dead last in that division because they're a total disaster. I do think that over the course of time, Bill Callahan is going to wind up coaching up this offensive line to where the tackles are going to play representatively, and hopefully that will give Will Levis more time and more opportunity to do what he does best, and that's drive the football downfield. So, look, I know the Calvin Ridley signing was a big one. The Tony Pollard signing was a big one. If the offensive line doesn't play up, then you can only get so much out of those guys. I do, however, believe there's enough talent on the offense, enough good coaching on the offensive line, and we've seen enough good performance from the defense that even though the Titans are 0-3, you should most definitely not assume that your season is over or any such nonsense.
I don't assume it, but it's hard to watch the pick six and the fumble close to the end of the second quarter a couple of weeks ago. We do have a get-right game, I believe, on Monday with the Dolphins. Dolphins are to that point where you feel like they may be the worst in the East, if not the Patriots, one of the two. But it's just good to know that. And you, I know, again, this is a cold read, but do you have in your head some of the better players in Titans Oilers history that you can share with us?
So if you were to assemble like Mount Rushmore of players in the history of that franchise, where my brain always goes is the backs. Now, I'm not sure if you would put all 4 studs there. But when you think about the lineage of Titans / Oilers running backs historically, it's a ridiculous list. It obviously starts with Earl Campbell, who came to the league out of Texas and lit the world on fire. When he entered the league, he was a revelation, one of the best players in the league, immediately had a Hall of Fame career, and that's where the lineage starts. I think Eddie George, more than a 10,000-yard back, is an absolutely phenomenal player historically. Obviously, a really important contributor on the AFC title-winning team alongside Steve McNair, was incredibly consequential in the growth of that franchise. And for my money, when I was growing up, was the best Titan, and that's inclusive of Steve McNair. The number 3 guy for me would be Chris Johnson, who ran for 2,000 yards in a season and was unlike almost any back that I've ever seen. You have not seen a running back in the NFL, honestly, to this day, with that kind of straight line speed of Chris Johnson. And it was game speed. It wasn't combine speed. It was game speed. Chris Johnson could score from anywhere on the field, and there are very few running backs in the history of the NFL for whom you could say that about. And then obviously that lineage ends with Derrick Henry, who I think is the defining back of his generation, and that is inclusive of Christian McCaffrey. Derrick Henry has been a bell cow forever. Derrick Henry also rushed for 2,000 yards. Derrick Henry was as big a reason as anybody why the Titans got themselves to the AFC Championship game, why the Titans wound up beating Baltimore in that game in the playoffs that they had no business winning, in my opinion, coming in, is the kind of guy that you could just basically build your offense around, and by the end of the game, just serve as a sledgehammer to invert the defensive line and wind up leaning on the defense in such a way that they had almost no chance to finish those games strongly because he was such a bell cow. So even though there's other great players in the history of the Tennessee Titans, I will acknowledge, look, I mean, Warren Moon, superstar. Steve McNair, absolute superstar. Like, there are definitely great players in the history of that franchise. For me, it goes to the running back position where I think they have the best lineage of backs by any franchise in the NFL.
I agree with you. It's hard to say that you find 4 players that are anywhere near that overall. You find 1 or 2 players with the Bears, and with the Ravens even. Jamal Lewis was a beast for a short period of time, but it's hard to find that. When you look for facts, and again, we only have a few minutes. When you look at facts and you submit them, you put them in your memory, what are things that just kind of jump out at you? Football, baseball, basketball, hockey. What are things that kind of make you remember?
So I wouldn't say that anything makes me remember. I would say that the reason I am where I am is because of a lifetime of sports love and fandom. And that's really the only way to do this. Like you run into people in any profession that love it the way that you do from the day that they can remember. So I remember watching baseball games when I was 4, 5, 6 years old and just falling in love with the sport by myself. I didn't come from a sports family. It's something that I didn't inherit. It's something that I created for myself, and I have no good explanation for it. But for me, I love and remember and know that aspect of sports history. For me, it's the genius, the magic, the beauty of the numbers in baseball. My favorite sport, first, last, and always, that has really transcended all else. And so, for example, Cal Ripken Jr. playing 2,632 consecutive games and breaking Lou Gehrig's streak of 2130, magic. Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hit streak is magic. Bob Gibson's 1.12 ERA in 1968, the year of the pitcher, is magic. Roger Maris hitting 61 home runs in 1961, breaking Babe Ruth's record of 60, in which he hit in 1927. It's magic. Cy Young winning 511 games, the most unassailable record in all of sports. Magic. Stan Musial had 1,815 hits at home, 1,815 hits on the road. That's magic. Now, magic is different to every person. If you're a sports fan, you might like sports the way that I like sports. I like the numbers. I like the back of the baseball card. That's part of what made me love sports. I played baseball through college, and so I obviously have the playing experience. But for me, it's the numbers and the fact that you can compare a 19th century pitcher to a 21st century slugger and do so honestly is what makes baseball great. It's what makes sports great. I love the numbers because they're enduring and they connect generations, they connect eras better than anything else. And so I enjoy watching a game just like the next guy, but I also so enjoy the history and the beauty and the majesty of sports going back to the 19th century in some cases.
You bring that up, 19th century to 2000, the 21st century. There was a game on PlayStation a few years ago, MLB, can't remember the year, where I played throughout 2 or 3 seasons. It was amazing. And the more you play, you get to unlock different players. You had Babe Ruth as a pitcher, Babe Ruth as a hitter, and you could see how, now I don't know how accurate to life it would be, but it was neat to see Bob Gibson pitching against Barry Bonds. It was neat. It was neat to see that.
That's super cool. One of the things in our book that might fit your fancy, let me see if I can actually pull this up on the fly because
this is all audible. So anything that you want to say, just go ahead and say it. There's no visual.
Oh, understood. So, but all I'm saying is we do Greeny Night consecutive chapters. We have what would the all-time perfect lineup be in Major League Baseball. So I'm looking right now.
Oh, golly, how would you do that?
35 and 76. I'm doing this on the fly. So we do this. What is the all-time perfect baseball lineup according to Hembo? That's chapter 34. chapter 35 is what is the perfect all-time baseball lineup according to Greeny. In almost every other case in this book, it's he and I collaborating to spit out the list that you see. But in those two chapters in particular, we both independently put together our dream baseball lineups. And I was astonished to find that we have very little overlap in terms of who we have at each position. So I'm sure, like, if you're anything like me, this is the kind of thing you've thought, the kind of thing that you've done. But when you said the idea of Bob Gibson pitching to Barry Bonds, connecting baseball across eras, that's what it made me think of.
Good night. I see Greeny's Ricky Henderson starting out. Barry Bonds. I don't know if you could disagree with either one of you. I remember watching Ricky with. I grew up watching him with the A's, and then I think he was with the A's, and then the Yankees are flip flopped over there. He was the ultimate starting. You may know this off the top of your head. He has some insane amount of leadoff home runs. I mean, I think he leads the history, doesn't he?
He does have the most leadoff home runs. Off the top of my head, I think the number is 79, which is insane.
That's nothing. 79 leadoff home runs. Good gracious.
He also stole 130 bases in a season once. I mean, Ricky Henderson is the greatest leadoff hitter of all time. However, for my list, and the reason I have Barry Bonds as my leadoff hitter is because I don't particularly care about the traditional leadoff hitter. Barry Bonds is going to get on base with more frequency because he's Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is also going to have a lot more power. There's nothing wrong with my leadoff hitter being able to hit 73 home runs, or even the Pittsburgh version of Barry Bonds that's going to go 40-40. So that's how I justified that decision. You can't go wrong. You're not going to score markedly less runs if Ricky Henderson is leading off for you than Barry Bonds. But I did mine with a more analytical approach, and he did his more with a sort of baseball history romanticized approach.
I remember Ricky Henderson starting off, but also Barry Bonds will get walks. Yeah.
Barry Bonds broke Ricky Henderson's walks record, I believe. So that's exactly who should be at the top of any lineup.
I agree. Let's do a couple more things, then I know we got to go. Number one, if you had the chance just to sit down and talk to anybody in sports history, and that's broad.
Dead or alive.
Dead or alive. I mean, if you could have a moment where they're resurrected for an hour, who would you speak to?
Resurrected for an Hour is the good name of a new radio segment that I might steal.
So probably like a grunge band or something.
Resurrected for an Hour. The answer to that question is Ted Williams for me. As one who adores the history of baseball, I find him to be an eminently fascinating figure in so many ways. He is obviously the mad scientist who wrote the book The Science of Hitting, the greatest hitter that ever lived, batted .406 in 1941. 521 home runs, 1,839 RBI, missed nearly 5 full seasons in two separate wars.
World War II in Korea. Can you imagine what it would have been like if he played through those 5 seasons?
He would have hit 700 home runs, or at least approached that number. Ted Williams had a career and life incomparable to most anyone in the history of any discipline. He was inarguably the greatest hitter of his generation, or perhaps any generation. He was such a skilled pilot that John Glenn hand-selected him to be his wingman. So he was incredibly good at that too. And is also considered by some to be the greatest fly fisherman of all time. So think about the idea that you could be the best in the world at 3 different things. He was an astonishingly talented individual with such a remarkable demeanor and temperament and personality that was his undoing in his personal life, but was the reason he was so ruthlessly great in everything that he did professionally. I would love to spend an hour with a resurrected Ted Williams.
That'd be amazing. Just to get it.
Who's your answer to that question?
Who's my answer to that question? Right now, it would be it. I grew up a Broncos fan, so it would probably be John Elway. I know he's still alive. I just love to talk to him. I'm a huge Jay Cutler fan because he was a Vanderbilt alum, and that's my team. So I'd love to talk to him, but I think he wouldn't care about that. But John Elway would be the guy. John Elway is the reason why I learned how to throw a football by watching him. He was playing against the 49ers one preseason game. I think it was Japan. And I remember going back and forth, watching him flick the ball and watching his footwork. So Elway would be the one.
Speaking of John Elway, I'm looking at our book right now, chapter number 7. Who are the top 7 athletes to wear the number 7? And if you Got Your Number, our first book, you won't be surprised to learn that we have John Elway number 1 on the list, ahead of Mickey Mantle, Cristiano Ronaldo, Tina Thompson, Phil Esposito, Pudge Rodriguez, and David Beckham. Not to give anything away. The reason I wanted to mention those things and mention those things in order before you let me go, is because that was such a controversial choice to have John Elway over Mickey Mantle. But it is our belief, it is my belief, that John Elway means as much to the Denver Broncos as any person in football means to their franchise. There is no Denver Broncos without John Elway. If you were to assemble a Mount Rushmore of figures in the history of Denver sports, honestly, until the Nuggets won the championship last year, it would be 4 different headshots of John Elway, who symbolized everything that you guys represent, who brought the franchise from a place of desperation to prosperity, who obviously coaxed Peyton Manning to come there to win the Super Bowl in 2015. There is no Denver sports without John Elway, and that's why we had him number 1 on that list.
I remember I was at Freed Hardeman my freshman year, was watching that game, and I remember years waiting for that game when they beat the Packers, doing the helicopter spin and going outside the dorm yelling, and people looking at me like, "What's going on?" I said, "You just have to be there." Elway, again, fact, he was not drafted by the Broncos. He was not. All right.
He was drafted by the Colts.
He was drafted by the Colts. Didn't want to go play for Cush, if I remember, Frank Cush, and then they sent him off to Denver, and the rest is history. Baltimore moved to Indianapolis. All right, tell us a little bit more about your book, and thank you for coming on.
It's entitled "Got Your Answers." It is the 100 most spirited sports debate, which Greeny and I answer definitively in most every case with a top 10 list. There are some top 5s, top 15s, top 20s, but by and large, if there is a sort of spirited, hot debate topic that you have ever had with your buddies, we probably answer the question in this book. It's something that we're really proud of. I can honestly say that I spent literally thousands of hours researching this book, which I'm now holding in my hands. It's $15. It's my pride and joy. I'm so proud of what we've created. And from the sound of this conversation, you've already cracked it open and have enjoyed what you've read as well.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to read it all right now. I'm going through a master's program, so I have to read a lot of things, but I got the chance to thumb through it, read several chapters, and I enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you for coming on. And by the way, your show helps me get through the gym each morning at that time. So you give me extra motivation. I'm waiting for your program, your part of the program to come on. I enjoy every bit of it. Paul, thank you for coming on.
Later, friends.
All right. And thank y'all for listening to the Football's Family Podcast.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude. And I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.